Everyday here with a tank guide for the hard mode blaster fight in the Ravagers operation. This fight's one of the most complicated from a group coordination standpoint, but as tanks, once you get the pattern down, it's actually a really straightforward fight, and I really enjoyed tanking it. So you're introduced to the mechanics pretty slowly. You have these giant knockbacks that are going to be present through the entire fight from the blaster droid, and these basically force a tank swap. In this first phase, if the tanks don't swap after these knockbacks, Blaster will do a follow-up attack that will knock you off the platform, or knock you into the electrified fence, and either of these will kill you. So you just have your two tanks positioned at the very beginning, just to point in opposite directions, and they swap on the giant red knockback. After 3 swaps, these large yellow circles will start spawning. There's a cast bar associated with them, and they'll spawn in relatively quickly after the cast. As the tank holding the boss when these spawn, it's going to be your responsibility to figure out quickly which of the 2 directions that we're putting the boss in are going to be safe. So you can see right there, the place where the assassin was going to get knocked back would have been straight into a yellow, so we had to move and point in this direction. So basically it's mostly pattern recognition at the very beginning to figure out which is the safe direction to point the boss. It's also important, if you get mines at this point, to do 2 things. One is make sure you're coordinated with the other tank, so you can get by each other with mines. We like to have the tank with the boss shift towards the outside of the platform, while the one with the boss passes on the inside. And the other thing it's important to do is make sure you're giving the other people in your group enough space to run from place to place without blowing up their mines on you. So here we've transitioned to the second phase. It's nice that the yellow circles become static spawns at this point, so we like to face the boss towards the door you come in, that half of the room at all times from this point in the fight on. And the boss droid has spawned in. So the boss droid's a pretty punishing droid to deal with. He does a lot of damage with his flame wheel. It's relatively difficult to hold aggro on him because you want to kite the flame wheel to avoid taking too much damage from it. And he also does his cutting arm, which is a very significant amount of damage that stacks over time. So what we like to do is have a DPS step in and take 10 stacks of the 20 stacks from the cutting arm. And they'll take those stacks around the middle of the cast. But it's important as a tank that you're using cooldowns, especially in this phase. So we like to have one tank holding Blaster and the other tank holding the little droid. And again, you swap on knockbacks. You don't technically have to swap on knockbacks at this point, because once the little droid's out, the Blaster droid stops doing his secondary knockback. But if you eat the knockback and you still are holding Blaster, you take the follow-up damage when you're out of range of your healers, and that's very dangerous and might kill you. So you see here, we're going to do a couple rotations of this. You see the assassin tank off to the side holding the little droid. It's about to do its cutting wheel, and the assassin tank will kite it. The dangerous part right here is that the tanks may accidentally catch each other with Blaster's cleave. You just need to coordinate that to make sure that both tanks know where the cleaves are going to be pointed so they don't eat the knockback. So the best place to use cooldowns here is when you're taking the arms, or the stacking debuff from the little droid. That's by far the most damaging portion of the fight, unless you happen to get caught in a flame wheel with a mine. If the mine blows up and you can't get out of the flame wheel, that's also a pretty likely place to die. One really useful cooldown here that really overshadows anything the other tanks can do is Resilience, or Force Shroud, from an Assassin or Shadow. That will totally negate any damage from the small droid's stacking arm. So if you could save that for the second half of the stacks from Little Droid, that will just save your life and avoid having to have any small DPS or any DPS come in to take those stacks. So at this point we've pushed into the final burn. The boss Master Droid is doing his giant AoE cleave that, if you look at the raid frames, is putting a purple debuff on everyone. This debuff keeps you from getting knocked back when the big droid does his cast, and then the big droid's cast also removes that debuff from everyone. So we're watching the raid frames and waiting for the boss to do his knockback, like right there. You see all the stacks go away, and then the tank holding the little droid turns him back. You don't want to leave him point at the group full time, because you see that lightning stacking debuff. That's up to 31 stacks on Salim right now. That increases the damage done to you from all sources by a very significant amount. So we have one tank hold Blaster and one tank hold the little droid, and then at about 30 stacks we swap. Since you have to push them both at the same time, it's important that you have enough defensive cooldowns to last as long as possible in that phase, just to help your healers and DPS out. At the end of the fight, run out, cheer, wait for the boss to blow up, and collect your loot.